Gorillas in the Mist, a story by Diane Fossey. What is this book about? Gorillas in the Mist is a book written by primatologist Diane Fossey. It entails the journey and discoveries of her studies on the mountain gorillas in the forests of Rwanda and Uganda. It is not only a book about these vanishing gorillas, but also the story of the American Diane Fossey and her experiences while studying and protecting these gorillas. The story is written from Fossey's point of view, which is first person. It follows actions and interactions with the gorillas and relates a number of the actions and antics demonstrated by the gorillas to human behavior. It is completely aware that in the book of Diane's deep love for the gorillas and her desire to save them and their habitat at all costs. Included in this book are several pages of photos that allow the reader to observe the gorillas. The book is also followed by appendixes outlining food vegetation, graphs detailing topics such as frequency of bursts and rainfall in the area, as well as information on vocalizations and findings from autopsies performed on the gorillas and parasite studies. There is also an appendix dedicated to the gorillas' family lines. Gorillas in the Mist recounts some of the events of the 13 years spent with the mountain gorillas in their natural habitat and includes data from the 15 years of continuing field study. In 1758, Carl Linnaeus officially recognized the close relationship between humans, monkeys, and apes. The ordinate primate encompasses them all and denotes their high ranking in the animal kingdom. Man and the three great apes, orangutan, chimpanzee, and gorilla, are the only primates without tails and have 5 digits on each hand and foot, the first of which is opposable. Gorillas remain the only other type of extant primate with which human beings share such close physical characteristics. From them we may learn much concerning the behavior of our earliest primate prototypes, as behavior does not fossilize. There are 3 subspecies of gorillas. They include morphological variations related primarily to habitat and their scientific name: lowland gorilla, mountain gorilla, and eastern lowland gorilla. The classification of mountain gorillas, Gorilla Barangay, includes eukaryote, Animalia, Chordata, Mammalia, primates, Hominidae, gorilla, and Gorilla Barangay. Mountain gorillas might possibly be doomed to extinction in the same century in which it had been discovered. For this reason, Dr. Leakey wanted a long-term field study done. How the project came about? Dr. Leakey spoke to Diane about heading a long-term field project to study the gorillas in Africa. After Fossey made an impression, he secured the funding for the study. How did Diane Fossey habituate with the gorillas? Through patient effort. Fossey was able to observe the animals and accustom them to her presence. The data that she gathered greatly enlarged contemporary knowledge of the gorillas' habits, communication, and social structure. Observing them openly and from a distance, over time she gained their acceptance. She put the gorillas at ease by imitating regular activities like scratching and feeding, and copying their contentment vocalizations. Diane crawls toward groups on knuckles and knees, as it kept her in the gorilla's eye level but also conveyed the impression that she was settled and not about to barge into their midst. Once the gorilla's curiosity was satisfied, they would resume their usual activities, forgetting that she was there. Diane relied heavily on nose prints for identification purposes. As no 2 humans have the same fingerprint, no 2 gorillas have exactly the same nose print. Diane Fossey wanted to show the understanding that the gorilla is not a violent animal, as depicted in popular culture such as King Kong. The gorillas charge only when defending their groups from intrusion by other gorillas or by poachers. They would die to protect their young, and if not for encroachment brought upon by poachers, they wouldn't harm anyone. Gorilla dung. To help track the gorillas, Diane studies gorilla dung and learns a great deal about the animals from this. If the animals have been feeding on fruit, it can be found in the dung and could provide clues to where the group had been ranging. The relative age of dung was determined by the number of flies swarmed around it. Fossey puts fresh dung and vegetation discards in controlled situations to see how long it takes for particular changes to occur, which added more to her tracking experience. Diuretic dung is deposited individually when a gorilla is ill. However, when numerous animals of a group leave diuretic dung along a trail, it indicates that the gorillas were alarmed, most likely by poachers. She notes that gorillas sometimes eat their own dung, but only if they catch it prior to hitting the ground. And the eating of excrement occurs for nutritional deficiencies. Analyzing the dung contents of the night nest make it possible to determine the composition of fringe or census groups, and also it was a reliable means of learning if births or transfers were occurred within study groups. Night nests. Gorillas are diurnal and build their night nests in different locations each evening. 98% of gorillas' night nests are built from non-food vegetation. Adult night nests are sturdy, compact structures, sometimes resembling oval leafy bathtubs made from bulky plants, such as lobelia and senecio. The nest can be built in trees as well as on ground. However, because of adult gorillas' great weight, nests are more commonly found on the ground. A favored nesting location during the rainy season was in sheltered hollows of tree trunks, and nests not only offer protection from the elements, but also provide early morning snack in the form of decayed tree bark and roots. Nests built by immatures are often only flimsy clusters of leaves until practice enables the construction of a solid, serviceable nest. Ordinarily, a youngster remains sleeping in the mother's nest either until he grows up or until the female again gives birth. Digit the gorilla. Digit was Fossey's favorite gorilla. He was a young male when Fossey first encounters him. He had a twisted finger, apparently the result of having been broken. The gorilla was playful and often took Fossey's camera and other equipment. Digit was eventually killed and decapitated by poachers, and a year after Digit's death, in his memory, Fossey created the Digit Fund to help raise funds for gorilla protection. After Diane was killed, her grave was placed next to Digit's in the forest. Connection to biology. Gorillas are the only other types of primates with which human beings share such close physical characteristics. It is logical to assume that they come from a recent common ancestor, as their characteristics show that they are closely related. They are also homologous, since they share many of the same features that are used for the same or different tasks, such as 5 digits on each hand and foot, the first of which is opposable. Speciation between different types of gorillas. From an ancestral population evolved into separate species due to a period of geographical separation. Natural selection. In order to survive, they have to adapt to the poachers and the logging. They are becoming extinct. These gorillas need favorable traits to allow organisms to adapt to the changing environment. Though they are like us in a lot of ways, we have adapted and thrived through technology and tools. And if the gorillas don't adapt soon, they will become extinct and wiped out from natural selection. But as well as human poachers. Gorillas' diet. Gorillas travel more rapidly in areas where food resources are limited, and also when they are undertaking exploratory sallies treks into unfamiliar terrain. Gorillas feed upon some 58 plant species from the 7 zones in which Fossey's study area was located. Leaves, shoots, and stems formed about 86% of their diet, and fruits only 2%. Dung, dirt, bark, roots, grubs, ants, and snails were also eaten, but to a far lesser extent than foliage. The most common herbaceous plants consumed are thistles, nettles, and celery, which would grow up to 8 feet. The scraggly galium vine forms the bulk of gorillas' diet, most likely because it, unlike other vegetation, grows at nearly all levels of the forest, from amid thick ground foliage to the tops of tree branches, where it was more easily obtained by agile immatures than by adults. Groups sometimes venture into new areas trying to find sources of food. Some foods are prized, and and groups may clash when these foods are in limited supply. Bamboo is an example. According to Fossey, gorillas also go on occasional soil-eating binges and choose places high in minerals for these periods. The various groups being tracked by Fossey prefer different areas for feeding. Various sounds of the gorillas. Fossey describes the various sounds of the gorillas, including a belching sound that indicates contentment. When one animal expresses a series of sibilantine belch voice vocalizations, it brings a chain of similar responses from others nearby, establishing the location and identification of those participating. This sound is the perfect communication for humans to imitate when trying to initiate contact with gorilla groups, either partially or totally obscured in vegetation. By using the sound, Diane informs the animals of her presence and allay any apprehensions they might have on hearing the noise of vegetation being broken near them. Milestones of Diane Fossey. Beginning in 1963, Diane Fossey tours Africa. She commits herself to a 3-year bank debt and finances a 7-week safari through parts of Africa. There she visited Dr. Louis Leakey and had her first encounter with a gorilla with the help of Joanne and Alan Root. In 1966 and 1967, Diane Fossey was in Kibara. Thanks to Dr. Louis Leakey, Diane was again on her way to Africa. She arrived in Nairobi, then set off for the Congo. She set up camp in the Kibara Meadow to study mountain gorillas. Karasoke in 1967. After being forced to leave her site due to a political situation and warned not to return to the Congo, Fossey continued her work on the Rwandan side of the mountains as she was desperate to keep her studies up. She established the Karasoke Research Center in Rwanda's Virunga Mountains. The Digit Fund was created in 1978. Diane established the Digit Fund after one of her favorite gorillas died at the hands of poachers in the previous year. Fossey created the Digit Fund to provide support for gorilla protection and anti-poaching initiatives. This book includes Diane's constant battle with the poachers who go after the gorillas, killing many. Poachers sever their hands and feet for souvenirs. Here there are links to a short video on Diane Fossey and her gorillas, as well as the Diane Fossey Gorilla Fund. In November 1973, zoologist Diane Fossey presented this National Geographic documentary in front of a live audience. That's the end of my presentation. Thanks for listening.